The planet was legally classified as a graveyard. But I didn't end oppose, die. I was standing in a field of green wheat, holding 50 lives in my hands. Want to know how we survived the dead zone? Because if I failed, the oxygen scrubbers would shut down, and 51 corpses would fertilize the ash. Stick around, and you and oppose. LO understand why the greatest cheat code in the universe ISN and oppose. Fire or steal it and oppose. Knowing what a single seed can do. But back to that wheat. We didn't end oppose. Start with lush fields. We started in the absolute dark. The drop ship hit the surface of Tartarus 9 like a meteor made of scrap metal. Warning sirens blared through the cabin. Smoke filled the enclosed space. Did the High Council expect us to survive the landing sequence? No. Did I care about their political expectations? Also no. We were exiles. Discarded trash. 50 women and 1 man, sent to colonize a barren rock lacking an atmosphere, drinkable water, or any trace of hope. The massive steel doors hissed open. Toxic air leaked inside. I slammed the emergency seal override button. The rusted gears ground together. Silence. We were trapped in a metal coffin. I looked around the dim red lighting of the primary cargo hold. The girls were shivering, coughing, weeping quietly. Some wore tattered prison rags, others wore torn evening gowns from the recent nobility purge. None of them belonged in this hell's cape. Neither did I. I walked toward the supply crates. The military promised us 3 months of synthetic rations. I pried the lid off the first wooden box with a bent crowbar. Why were the emergency rations so heavy? I reached inside. Sand. Just gray, lifeless sand. They had an oppose. Sent us to build a colony. They sent us here to starve. The realization hit the cramped room like a physical blow. Panic erupted among the survivors. End quote. Where is the food? End quote. A girl named Kelia asked. End quote. There is none. End quote. I said. End quote. We and oppose. We going to die here. End quote. Another screamed. End quote. Quiet. End quote. My voice was and oppose, loud, but it cut through the rising hysteria. I didn't end oppose, know it yet, but the empire we would eventually build started with the quietest moments of despair. I needed to think clearly. Every panicked breath we took drained the ship and oppose's limited oxygen battery faster. A girl in the far corner collapsed onto the grated floor. Maya. She was heavily pregnant, exiled for carrying a disgraced rebel and oppose's child. The violent impact of our crash landing had triggered early labor. The timing was horrific. We possessed no medical supplies, no clean water, nothing. Just fear and the suffocating heat of the sealed hull. I knelt beside her shaking form. Her skin was pale, drenched in cold sweat. A few older women rushed over, ripping their dirty fabric to act as makeshift bandages. For a brief moment, I thought we could manage this quietly. Then Maya screamed. The sound tore through the heavy silence, echoing against the metallic walls. It was a sound of pure agony. Blood pooled on the floorboards. The situation shifted from a slow death by starvation to an immediate, visceral crisis. Was this how our story ended? Before it even truly began? I pressed my hands against Maya and Appo's shoulders, trying to stabilize her trembling body. The air grew thicker, heavier in my lungs. The oxygen percentage on the main console ticked down to 14%. The alarm flashed yellow. Then, a sharp, burning sensation ignited in my right forearm. Pain flared, white-hot and blinding. I couldn't and oppose, pull my arm back. The system and oppose, text glowed directly in my retinas, and oppose, progenitor node, initializing, and oppose. I didn't and oppose, need the notification. I could feel the microscopic machinery fusing with my nerves, burrowing deep into my flesh. What was this hidden technology? It felt volatile, like trying to drink from a high-pressure fire hose. The burning sensation spread rapidly to my fingertips. Maya pushed hard, her voice breaking. A tiny, fragile cry pierced the heavy atmosphere. The baby was born. A boy. Small, but miraculously breathing. The moment the infant drew its first lungful of recycled air, the glowing text in my vision shifted. And Appos, condition met, new life detected. Reward, infinite seeds unlocked. And Appos, my palm felt suddenly heavy. I opened my clenched fist. A single, glowing green kernel rested on my calloused skin. It radiated a strange warmth. The surrounding girls stared at my hand, their weeping temporarily paused. The seed pulsed with an inner light, casting emerald shadows across their dirt-streaked faces. I walked toward the open crate of sand. I dropped the glowing kernel into the barren dust. I waited. 1 second. 2. Nothing happened. The green light faded entirely. The seed just lay there, a useless pebble in a box of dirt. I clenched my jaw. We were doomed after all. The oxygen gauge hit 12%. The red emergency lights began to spin overhead, painting the terrified faces in rhythmic flashes of crimson. Wait. Let me rewind. Because I missed a crucial detail in my panic. The system didn't end Appos. T just give me a normal seed. It gave me something that required a specific catalyst. I noticed something on the floor near Maya and Appos' resting spot. A single drop of fresh blood. My own blood from a deep scratch I got while opening the crate earlier. I walked back, picked up the dormant kernel, and pressed it against the crimson stain. The biological reaction was instantaneous. The seed absorbed the moisture greedily. It didn't end Appos. T sprout normal roots. It exploded into a crystalline vine that shot across the floor. The aggressive plant devoured the metallic grating, transforming cold steel into a dense, mossy carpet. The air instantly smelled sweeter, richer. The oxygen gauge stopped dropping. It ticked up. 13%. 14. The vine climbed the walls, blooming with glowing blue flowers that exhaled pure, breathable air. We weren't an Appos. T just surviving the crash. We were terraforming the ship. But as the green light washed over the room, the ship and Appos' external sensors screamed a new warning. What exactly was waiting for us outside the hull? The ship was safe. Or so I thought. The external sensors blared a deafening rhythm. I believed the dead planet was truly empty. But I lied to myself. It wasn't Appos, T dead. It was merely starved. And we had just rung the dinner bell. I didn't end Appos, T know it yet, but every single seed I planted acted as a blinding beacon in the dark, calling out to the true lords of Tartarus 9. The steel hull groaned under an immense weight. Something massive dragged itself across the exterior plating. The sound resembled grinding stones. End quote. What is that? End quote. Kelia asked. End quote. Stay back. End quote. I said. End quote. Is it a rescue team? End quote. End quote. Rescue teams Don and Appos, T have claws. End quote. I grabbed the heavy metal crowbar. The primary airlock doors shuddered violently. The thick reinforced glass cracked, webbing into 1,000 tiny fractures. I needed a weapon. A real one. I looked at the glowing blue flowers breathing oxygen into our cramped space. The system interface pulsed behind my eyes. A dull ache throbbed in my temples. And Appos, analyze biological asset, and Appos, the glowing prompt flashed. I reached out, touching the crystalline vine. My fingers tingled violently, a static shock shooting up my elbow. The vine stiffened immediately, hardening into a dense, spear-like shaft. I ripped it free from the floorboards. It weighed almost nothing, yet felt harder than forged titanium. I stepped toward the groaning airlock. The outer hatch finally tore open. A creature pulled itself inside. But why did it look so terrifyingly familiar? The beast possessed the twisted, elongated limbs of a starved hound, but its skin was translucent, showing black veins pumping viscous fluid. It lacked eyes, featuring only a gaping maw lined with jagged, crystalline teeth. Those teeth mirrored the jagged rocks outside. The creature lunged. I didn't end Appos, T hesitate. I thrust the hardened vine spear forward with all my strength. The sharp tip pierced the monster, I gasped, tasting copper on my tongue. Then, a new notification burned into my retinas, accompanied by a freezing sweat down my spine. And Oppos. Alternative condition met, first blood shed. Reward crimson spore, and Oppos. A heavy, dark red pod materialized in my open palm. It felt unnaturally hot, blistering my skin upon contact. I shoved the burning spore directly into the creature and Oppos' gaping mouth. I kicked hard, rolling frantically away as the beast instinctively swallowed the strange pod. The monster convulsed violently. 3 agonizing seconds later, thorny crimson vines erupted violently from inside its chest, tearing the creature apart from the inside out. The parasitic plant quickly anchored itself to the bloody metal floor, absorbing the highly acidic fluids. Silence returned to the shattered cargo hold. I stood up slowly, clutching my badly bleeding leg. 2 dead predators lay ruined. 50 terrified women watched me. 1 newborn child slept through the carnage. We Kuden and Oppos stay in the crashed vessel. The hull was fundamentally compromised. The noise and smell would undoubtedly attract more scavengers. End quote. Gather whatever ISN and Oppos bolted down. End quote. I ordered. Kelia stared blankly at the mangled corpses. End quote. Where are we going? End quote. End quote. Outside. End quote. I said. End quote. It and Oppos. Highly toxic out there. End quote. End quote. Not anymore. End quote. I walked carefully to the massive breach in the metallic hull. The landscape outside revealed a desolate expanse of gray ash and jagged obsidian spires under a starless sky. I held the original green kernel tightly in my uninjured hand. The system labeled it the progenitor node. I stepped bravely onto the dead alien soil. I tossed the glowing seed onto the shifting ash. I intentionally sliced my own palm with the crowbar and Oppos' sharp edge. I let several heavy drops of warm blood fall onto the waiting kernel. The ground quaked beneath my boots. A massive shockwave knocked me to my knees. The thick ash shifted violently. Giant organic roots tore through the planetary crust, spreading outward in a rapid, explosive green wave. Within 10 seconds, a sprawling canopy of bioluminescent blue trees formed a massive protective dome over the entire crash site. The toxic atmospheric gases hissed angrily as they hit the broad leaves, instantly converting into fresh, cold air. A small stream of perfectly clear water bubbled up miraculously from the fractured earth, filling a natural obsidian basin. The exiled girls slowly emerged from the ruined steel ship. They stepped cautiously onto the soft, glowing moss. Some wept openly, falling to their weary knees to drink deeply from the fresh spring. Maya cradled her fragile infant, resting peacefully against a massive, warm tree trunk. We had a fortified sanctuary. We possessed clean water. We breathed pure air. I watched the glowing perimeter intently. The newly formed crimson defensive vines had woven a thick barricade around our unexpected oasis. We built a temporary paradise in hell. Did I think this fragile peace would last? No. Peace is just a brief pause between predator attacks. The system interface flickered ominously again. A faint percentage bar appeared in the bottom corner of my vision, mysteriously labeled End Oppos. Harvest efficiency. End Oppos. I didn't End Oppos. Understand the metric then. The number sat at a mere 2%. Why was the hidden system scanning the girls' End Oppos' internal emotional states, rather than just mapping the external monsters' End Oppos' positions? I forced myself to ignore the strange anomaly, focusing entirely on bandaging my torn leg with a ripped cloth. We survived the brutal first day. But as the distant, sickly yellow sun finally rose, casting long, twisted shadows across the barren wastes, a strange silhouette appeared slowly on the misty horizon. It was End Oppos, a feral beast. It walked calmly on 2 legs. And it was wearing a dark, pristine uniform from my own former military unit. Who was standing out there in the toxic storm? The silhouette stepped through the thick gray mist. He wore the sleek, black armor of the Imperial Vanguard. My old unit. He was End Oppos, a scavenger. He was an executioner. The High Council Han and Appos, T just exiled us. They had sent a cleanup crew to guarantee our demise. This wasn't Appos, T about surviving the harsh elements anymore. It was about surviving a targeted assassination. I tightened my grip on the hardened vine spear. The armored man stopped at the edge of our glowing crimson barricade. He didn't end Appos, T draw a weapon. He simply raised a silver cylinder and pressed a button. A high-frequency hum vibrated my teeth. The protective thorny vines rapidly withered, turning into brown dust. He walked right through the breached perimeter. The toxic atmosphere rushed inside. The blue flowers choked. The girls screamed, covering their mouths. I charged. I thrust the spear directly at his chest plate. A blue kinetic shield flared, absorbing the impact entirely. The recoil shattered my makeshift weapon into useless splinters. He backhanded me with a gauntlet fist. I crashed into the dirt. My vision blurred. He stepped over me, ignoring my presence, and walked toward the huddled women. He unholstered a heavy plasma pistol. He aimed directly at Maya and the sleeping infant. Did I have the strength to stop an armored vanguard barehanded? Absolutely not. But did I need physical strength when I controlled the very ground he walked on? No. I remembered the crimson spore that killed the beast earlier. It thrived on acidic fluids and biological matter. The vanguard and Appos' kinetic shield repelled fast-moving solid objects. But what about something growing beneath his boots? I dragged myself toward the dying crimson barricade. I grabbed a handful of the withered, thorny dust. I needed a catalyst. I bit my inner cheek hard, drawing fresh blood, and spat onto the dead spores in my calloused palm. The dust instantly rehydrated, glowing an angry, boiling red. I threw the muddy clump at his armored back. The shield didn't end Appos, T block it. It wasn't Appos, T an attack, it was just dirt falling harmlessly. The bloody mud splattered against his exhaust vents. He turned slowly, lowering the pistol. End quote, pathetic, end quote, he muttered. He raised the weapon toward my head. I didn't end Appos, T flinch. I just waited. Why was I smiling at a loaded gun? Because the exhaust vents pulled air inside his sealed suit. End quote, you missed, end quote, the executioner said. End quote, I wasn't Appos, T aiming at your armor, end quote, I replied. End quote, what did you end quote? He never finished the sentence. A violent coughing fit seized him. The microscopic crimson spores had entered his helmet and Appos' air circulation system. Thorny vines erupted aggressively from his breathing tubes, shattering the glass visor from the inside. He dropped the plasma pistol, clawing uselessly at his own throat before collapsing heavily into the ash. The immediate threat was eliminated. We had survived the assassin. I wiped the crimson stain from my mouth, feeling a profound sense of relief wash over the terrified camp. The women rushed forward, securing the dropped weapon. I didn't end Appos, T know it yet, but every choice I made was leading to a much darker revelation about this victory. I stripped the vanguard of his kinetic shield generator and his communication device. We possessed armor now. We held a functioning energy weapon. We were no longer completely defenseless against the Empire. But as I inspected the shattered helmet, a chilling detail caught my eye. The internal heads-up display was still actively recording, transmitting our exact coordinates to an unknown receiver in orbit. We killed the assassin. But who was watching the live feed? And how many more ships were they preparing to send down? I smashed the transmitter with a heavy stone. The blinking red light died. I ordered the women to gather the remaining healthy blue vines. We spent the next 3 agonizing hours repairing the breached dome. We wove the glowing flora over the damaged section, sealing the toxic fog back outside. The atmosphere cleared. The girls actually laughed. Someone started humming a soft melody to Maya and Appos' resting child. We won. We had shelter, pure water, and salvage technology. For a brief, shining moment, I believed we were truly untouchable. Then, my internal system interface flickered violently. A sharp pain stabbed behind my optic nerves. The glowing text read, and Appos, end quote, heartbeat flatlined. Initiating Protocol 0, end quote. What exactly was Protocol 0? I didn't and Appos, have to wait long for the answer. The sky above our fragile bioluminescent dome began to shift. The thick, gray clouds parted rapidly, exposing the pitch-black void of space. A massive, triangular shadow blotted out the distant stars. An Imperial dreadnought had entered the lower atmosphere. We hadn't and Appos, won a war, we had merely annoyed a god. The power I needed to save 50 souls wasn't and Appos, going to come from a stolen gun. It had to come from understanding the deadly parasite living inside my own veins. The dreadnought and Appos' underside glowed with an apocalyptic, blinding orange light. The weapons arrays were locking onto our precise coordinates. A single orbital strike would vaporize the dome, the oasis, and everyone inside. I looked down at my trembling hands. The system demanded new life or shed blood to generate seeds. We had no pregnant women left. I had already bled myself dangerously weak. The heavy artillery hummed, a sound that shook the very bedrock of Tartarus 9. What was the going rate for 51 souls? Apparently, 1 orbital strike. The sky burned a toxic, brilliant orange. The dreadnought above fired its primary cannon without a warning broadcast. A blinding pillar of concentrated plasma descended, tearing aggressively through the thin atmospheric layer. We had perhaps 10 seconds before total, instantaneous vaporization. I stood directly in the center of the painted target zone, physically drained, holding nothing but dead dirt. I was utterly empty. The women behind me stopped screaming. Silence fell. But the parasitic system didn't end Appos. Just consumed blood or new life to function. It thrived on the emotional saturation it had been quietly harvesting since the crash. I didn't end Appos, fight the internal parasite anymore. I fully embraced it. I forced my raw terror, my desperate will to live, and the collective panic of 50 terrified women directly into the glowing neural interface. End quote. Take it all, end quote, I shouted. The efficiency meter instantly spiked from 15 to a critical 100%. Agony tore through my skull. My veins turned entirely black. I slammed my bare fist into the trembling earth, channeling every ounce of that harvested psychic energy into the deeply buried root network. The ground didn't end Appos, just shake, it broke apart. A colossal, twisting stalk of hyperdense, obsidian bark erupted violently upward from the bedrock, moving significantly faster than the falling orbital strike. It collided head-on with the descending plasma beam, greedily absorbing the raw thermal heat instead of burning away. The towering biological stalk pierced the upper atmosphere, slamming directly through the dreadnought and Appos' heavily shielded titanium hull. Massive secondary explosions ripped through the dying cruiser. I thought I was only defending our tiny, fragile oasis from an execution. But as the fractured Imperial vessel broke apart, deploying thousands of locked, reinforced stasis pods into the planetary gravity well, the terrifying truth hit me hard. The High Council was and Appos, trying to execute our small group. They deliberately used our desperate survival to terraform the dead planet for their real invasion force. We weren't and Appos, the targets. We were the unpaid gardeners. Flaming metallic debris rained down harmlessly outside our rapidly expanding biological shield. The surviving women watched in absolute, stunned silence as the aggressive alien jungle instantly devoured the falling Imperial wreckage. I stood up slowly, wiping a thick stream of dark blood from my upper lip. My body felt dangerously cold, yet vibrantly alive. That night, I finally learned that true power isn't and Appos, forged in massive orbital cannons or political mandates. It is quietly cultivated in the absolute dark, exactly when the enemy confidently assumes you are already dead. And the most dangerous weapon in the known universe isn't and Appos, a heavily armored dreadnought and Appos, knowing what a single seed can do. The immediate battle was over. But as the local fires died down, one of the heavily armored Imperial stasis pods hissed open on our glowing green moss. Why did the sleeping, enhanced soldier stepping out of the cryochamber have my exact military serial number tattooed on his neck.